Exposed. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. Chapter 10. I had expected the ride home to be awkward after what happened at Mason's house, but it wasn't. Mostly because he was distant and didn't give me any smug looks or smirks or taunt me about it. He seemed to have withdrawn from me completely and only spoke a perfunctory parting bye when he dropped me off. He appeared to have completely lost interest in me now. It was a startling thought, because he had been relentless for so long that it was strange to imagine him ignoring me. It was disturbing to realize that the idea didn't fill me with relief. I couldn't possibly want his attention, could I? I didn't want to believe that I could be that twisted that I would rather have any kind of attention from him than none at all. I had always hated how my mother sought male attention, and I had prided myself on being the opposite of her. Now I began to worry that I was more like her than I had ever thought. Mason had been my enemy, but I had let him kiss me twice today. I had succumbed to temptation just as easily as my mom had with all the men she had been with before she finally settled down with my dad. I didn't want to follow in her footsteps and measure my self-worth by how desired I was. I had already allowed Mason to have too much power over me, and I needed to regain control of my life. Feeling too restless to stay home, I drove to the YMCA and indulged in the urge to cool off in the pool. Seeing the people in it, I momentarily wished that I had my own private pool like Mason. It would be amazing to have it all to myself and be in the privacy of my own backyard. I had changed into my one-piece bathing suit, but I still felt overly exposed when I noticed a middle-aged man ogling my body. I quickly got into the water and submerged myself up to my shoulders. My mom would have loved knowing that he was looking at her, even if she had no interest in him. So I wasn't like her in that regard. I didn't revel in having the attention of every guy around me. Yet when Mason looked at me that way, I pushed that unwelcome thought from my mind and moved toward the swim lanes with determination. The steady, repetitive motions of swimming laps soothed my frazzled nerves. Everything else disappeared as I focused only on getting from one end of the pool to the other and back again. I kept going until my muscles were too fatigued to do another lap. This was another thing that Mason had prevented me from having. I had been planning to try out for the swim team, but I had given up on that idea after he ruined my reputation with his humiliating lies. I knew that nobody would want me on the team, and it killed my enthusiasm for joining. It was good to remember this, and all the ways in which Mason had wronged me. He didn't deserve my sympathy, and he certainly wasn't deserving of anything else from me. I could only blame my behavior today on temporary insanity, but at least I'd had enough sense not to take it any further than kissing. It was bad enough that he would now always hold a place in my memories as my first kiss. And my second, I thought bitterly. No more, I vowed. My next kiss would be with someone else, and it barely even mattered who, as long as it wasn't Mason. My resolve for this to happen was reinforced that night when my mind kept drifting back to my kisses with him. First was the more romantic one, with him looking so incredibly handsome in his tux and gazing at me like I had always imagined in my girlish fantasies. Kissing him that time had been a dream come true. I at least tried to linger on that memory, but it led to another, sultrier one. Mason coming at me with smoldering heat in his eyes and pulling me into a hot, hungry kiss. If only it hadn't felt so good. Why couldn't he have been a bad kisser? Why did he have to be as sexy as he looked? I needed to replace him with someone else, and sooner rather than later. He was holding that damn poem over my head, though, and I really didn't want him showing it to anyone. It would be mild embarrassment compared to the naked picture he had threatened me with before. But the thought of having my private words exposed like that was cringeworthy and something I very much wanted to avoid. Yet I also wanted to defy him. The solution was to do it in secret, so that he wouldn't know about it. That meant that I needed someone who wouldn't tell him. Remembering Josh's ridiculous fear of him, I decided that he was the perfect candidate. He was the only one of Mason's friends I would consider kissing anyway, since he was the only one of them who had been nice to me while I was still an outcast. I just had to convince him to go behind Mason's back with me. Then Mason would no longer be the only guy I'd kissed, and I would have someone else to think about. I should have long since replaced him with another crush, but being ostracized had put a damper on everything. I hadn't exactly been in the mood to giggle over cute guys, and I knew that setting my sights on anyone would be a lost cause, since Mason would ruin it for me. Which was what he was still doing, I realized. He was still stopping me from dating, and I had been too distracted to be pissed off about it. Well, I wasn't going to play by his rules anymore, I thought, as I went to change in the locker room. My vigorous swim had cleared my head and brought everything back into focus. Mason might not be acting like my enemy anymore, but he hadn't really changed. He was still an arrogant, selfish jerk who thought that he was entitled to have his way at all times. He never even considered other people's feelings. I was ashamed of how easily he had manipulated me with only a small modicum of kindness after all the cruelty that had preceded it. I had played right into his hands and let him off the hook for that picture, which he could still have a copy of on his computer for all I knew. I had just taken his word for it because I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the guy who had been making my life hell up until the very day before he showed up to bail me out of the situation he had put me in. I had actually been grateful to him for sparing me more misery. How screwed up was that? Worst of all was that I had caved when he had shown me the slightest bit of interest that I had been craving from him. I had kissed him. That was something that I couldn't even blame on him because I had done it myself. It was the very reason he thought he had the right to kiss me whenever he pleased, but I was going to set him straight about that. I went home that evening resolved to take back control of my life from Mason. I wasn't expecting him to call me, but I was ready with the right attitude when I saw his name on my screen. "What?" I snapped. "I'm not doing any more crap for you. Clean your own damn house."
"That's not why I'm calling," he said. "I'm sorry I treated you that way, but I'm not sorry for making you wear that sexy maid costume. I'd like to see you in that again, but I wouldn't have you do any housework. You could just lay back and let me do all the work."
My body responded to the image his words made me picture. I knew that he wasn't talking about me watching him do housework, and the implications of what he would be doing while I lay back were sinfully hot in my mind. This was not what I needed to think about. "You broke your promise," I exclaimed. "You said nothing physical, but you kissed me."
"You kissed me back,"
he countered. "No, I didn't. I pushed you away, but regardless, you promised not to kiss me. Our deal is off if you can't keep your end of it. I'm not going to let you use me for sex like your dad used my mom. You said you wouldn't touch me," I ranted. "You said I was beneath you, but you're a liar because—"
"Don't ever talk about my dad again,"
he cut in sharply.
"You understand, Ella? Never again."
His threatening tone chilled me, and his voice was ice cold when he spoke again after a short pause.
"I'll keep my promise, but you better keep yours."
"I didn't make any promises to you," I began to argue, despite how he had managed to intimidate me.
"You're my girlfriend,"
he retorted. "Pretend girlfriend," I corrected him.
"Real girlfriend,"
he insisted.
"Whether you kiss me or not, you're mine."
He might as well have called me his property, and it should have pissed me off more than it did. There should have been no part of me that was secretly reveling in hearing him call me his. "You're unbelievable," I said. "This is how you act when you're supposedly sorry for how you've treated me? What's different? Everything is still your way, so why should I forgive you?"
"What do you want me to do to make it up to you?"
he asked.
"I'll still beg you on my knees,"
he added in a darkly sensual tone. I wasn't going there again with him, so I quickly blurted out the thing I wanted that he couldn't twist into something sexual. "Friends. I want you to let me have friends." Hearing myself phrase that in that way reignited the fire of resentment within me.
"Sure,"
he agreed.
"I'll get Erin to be friends with you. She's a nice girl, and she'll be a perfect friend for you."
Although I liked Erin, I rejected his offer. "I don't want you to get me friends. I want to make friends myself, without you having anything to do with it. You ruined everything the last time."
"That was different,"
he said.
"Addison just wanted to be my girlfriend. Erin isn't like that. She's—"
"I don't care," I interrupted him, bristling at the mention of Addison's name. "I don't want you choosing my friends."
"Okay,"
he relented.
"I'll stay out of it."
"Tell that bitch Alicia to stay out of it too," I demanded. "If she and her minions bully my friends like Brooke did, I'll—"
"They won't,"
he interjected.
"Nobody is going to mess with you anymore, now that you're my girlfriend."
"And when I'm not?" I asked him. "What happens then? Is it going to go back to how it was before? Are you going to do everything you can to make me miserable again?"
"Are you breaking up with me?"
he demanded.
"Because I told you what would happen if—"
"No," I cut in. "I'm talking about when you break up with me, like you did with all your other girlfriends."
"That's not going to happen,"
he declared. That wrested a laugh from me. "No? It's true love forever? Spare me the bullshit, Mason. Just promise me that you'll leave my friends alone, for whatever your promises are worth."
"I keep my promises,"
he insisted. "Really?" I questioned sarcastically. "What about your promise not to kiss me? How long did that last?"
"Not long,"
he acknowledged.
"That one is too hard to keep, especially with you hanging all over me in that bikini."
"That was your stupid fault," I retorted. "Kidnapping me for that damned stupid photo shoot."
"It was a hell of a hot photo shoot,"
he said.
"It almost makes up for me having to delete that picture of you."
"Did you really delete it?" I asked, my anxiety surfacing to push aside my other emotions. "You said it wasn't only on your phone. Do you have a copy on—"
"No,"
he cut in.
"I lied that I had another copy. I deleted it right after I showed it to you, Ella, I swear."
"How do I know that you're not lying now?" I questioned him.
"Because I'm not. If I had it, I would still be holding it over you,"
he admitted. "Nice," I remarked with sarcasm. "But you can't, since I could call the police on you."
Which was another reason that I deleted it right away. I knew you would go to them sooner or later.
I believed him then, because that fit him a lot better than his story about not wanting anyone else to see me that way. I knew that he would always think of himself first, and he had been smart enough not to keep evidence that could get him caught. How he must have enjoyed tricking me into doing those humiliating things by blackmailing me with a photo that didn't exist. The thought of it burned me anew. "You asshole," I cursed angrily. "Don't you ever touch me again. Stay the hell out of my life." I hung up on him and dropped the phone on my bed before stalking around my room in agitation. I'd gone through all of that shit for nothing. The fear and humiliation, wearing that skimpy maid costume for him, getting down on my hands and knees to scrub his kitchen floor, cleaning his whole damn house, cooking dinner for him, which had led to him finding my poems. None of that would have happened if I had known that he'd deleted the picture. I should have called his bluff and threatened to call the police. Hell, I should have just called them, period. But I had been so scared of people seeing that picture and of my dad finding out about it. He would have, I realized now. regardless of whether it no longer existed. Since I was a minor, the police would have notified my parents if I accused Mason of taking a nude photo of me. I was screwed either way. Mason had the upper hand, as he always did. I heard my phone go off with a notification of a text message. It was from him, of course.
Can't stay out of your life since you're my girlfriend. Can't promise not to touch you, but promise it won't be sexual until you consent.
I shot him back a reply. When hell freezes over.
Satan is in for one hell of a cold spell.
I snorted at his reply and set my phone down on my nightstand. Mason thought it was a foregone conclusion that I would have sex with him, but I would show him how mistaken he was. When he got tired of waiting, he would end this ridiculous charade. In the meantime, I was going to start taking back everything that he had taken from me. He foiled my plans to talk to Alice on the bus the following morning when he showed up at my house to drive me to school. I didn't ask you for a ride, I complained in annoyance.
You don't have to ask,
he replied.
I know you don't have a car, so I'm driving you.
I'm fine taking the bus. In fact, I prefer it to going with you, so just go on without me.
Are you ready?
He asked, ignoring my protests like I'd never voiced them. With a heavy sigh, I went and got my backpack, deciding to talk to Alice later. I was not a morning person at the best of times, and I couldn't muster the energy to argue with Mason now. Besides, the passenger seat in his car was much more comfortable than sitting on the bus, although I tended to space out on the way to school regardless. The sudden appearance of Mason's face right in front of mine startled me and got my heart racing.
We're here,
he announced softly, in contrast to his aggressive, in-your-face move. I stared at him, feeling trapped, motionless against my seat. His mesmerizing eyes were bright silver in the morning light and striking in their hypnotic beauty. A smile played over his lips.
You were completely zoned out. I could have driven anywhere, and you wouldn't have noticed.
The uneasy realization that he was right brought me back to complete alertness. I had let my guard down like I trusted him. How could I keep forgetting that he was my enemy? Shoving him aside, I spoke forcefully in an attempt to assert control over the situation. Don't touch me. You promised no more kissing.
I was neither touching you nor kissing you,
he answered coolly. You were in my face, I retorted. Why else would you be so close if you weren't trying to kiss me?
I was trying to get your attention without touching you, because that's what you said you want. I'm just trying to be a good boyfriend and follow your rules,
he said in a smooth tone. I looked at him to see if he was serious, and I saw him watching me with a smirk on his face. You could never be a good boyfriend, I told him, choosing to settle for the plain truth rather than firing off an insult at him. He frowned at me.
I can be a good boyfriend.
I rolled my eyes. Yeah, right.
I can,
he insisted. That would require thinking of someone besides yourself, I stated, which you're incapable of doing. His expression hardened.
Give me a list,
he demanded. A list? I questioned.
Tell me all the things you think make someone a good boyfriend.
He appeared to be taking this seriously, and I didn't know what to make of it. Well, no cheating.
I've never cheated on my girlfriends,
he stated.
What else?
I regarded him dubiously, wondering if that was true. And, being considerate of her feelings and listening.
I can do that,
he said.
What else?
I snorted. You're doomed to fail from that one alone.
Give me your complete list,
he demanded.
Everything that makes a good boyfriend.
I realized that I hadn't ever thought about it so specifically. I had a general sense of how a good boyfriend behaved, but now I tried to isolate particular things. He, doesn't pressure her for sex? I gave him a pointed look.
That goes along with being considerate of her feelings,
he noted. surprising me by making that connection.
Anything else?
I took a minute to consider what would make a great relationship. They have conversations. He talks to her, and they have a connection.
Conversations about what?
Mason asked, bringing me back from imagining my fantasy relationship. About everything, I replied. They know each other better than anyone else knows them. He regarded me thoughtfully.
That's your list?
I felt a bit awkward about getting caught up in it and revealing that last part, so I didn't reflect on it any further. Yeah, I replied, and glanced away from him.
No cheating, being considerate, listening, and talking,
he listed.
The same goes for you too, though.
My gaze snapped back to his.
What's the matter?
He challenged.
You don't think you can be a good girlfriend?
I can be a better girlfriend than you can be a boyfriend, I retorted.
Really? Want to bet on that?
Sure, I agreed. That's a bet I'll win for sure.
What will you give me if you lose?
What will you give me? I countered. You're the one who's going to lose.
What do you want?
My poem, I answered decisively. I want it back, and I want you to stop blackmailing me.
Done,
he said, as sure of himself in this as he was about anything else.
And if I win...
He trailed off before fixing me with a heated look.
I want to see you naked again.
I'm not having sex with you, I immediately insisted.
I didn't say anything about sex. I won't even touch you. I just want to see you naked.
No way, I exclaimed. You're not getting another naked picture of me.
I'll give you my phone so you'll know I can't take your picture. And you can do it at your house so you'll know I don't have a camera set up anywhere. I'll even get naked too if you want to make sure I don't have a camera on me.
The thought of seeing him naked sent an illicit thrill through me. I shook my head, trying to clear it of such wayward thoughts. I'm not getting naked.
Not if you win,
he goaded me.
But I can't blame you for thinking that you'll lose. I know that I can beat you at this. You don't have any experience being someone's girlfriend, so you're guaranteed to screw this up.
That did it. That's because you didn't give me a chance to be anyone's girlfriend. You beat up my date and scared everyone off like the animal you are, so there is no way you can act human enough to win this, so you're on.
I'm an animal?
He inquired.
Tell me more, because that sounds very sexual.
It's not, I snapped, even as my face heated. You just look like a predator sometimes when you get a certain look in your eyes. I guess that's how you scare people.
But not you,
he said.
You don't seem to get scared of me, but you do get turned on. Is that what makes you wet?
I blushed furiously. Shut up, I ordered.
I'm just trying to be a good boyfriend and get to know you better than anyone else knows you,
he replied. I scowled at him, but had to look away from his smoldering gaze. Happening to notice the time, I used it as an excuse, although I was there earlier than I would have been if I'd taken the bus. I have to get inside, I declared, and pushed open my door to scramble out of his car. Mason caught up to me as I hurried toward the school building.
I'll walk you to class.
No, I protested. I want to make friends, and I can't do that when you're with me.
I thought that would make it easier for you to make friends,
he said. I just told you that you intimidate people, I retorted. That's not going to make them friendly.
Of course it is,
he stated.
They'll be too scared to piss me off, so they'll be nice to you.
That's not what I want, I complained. I want real friends who like me for real.
Good luck with that,
he said. I halted and turned to look at him full on. He took another step forward before reacting to me stopping and came back to face me. You don't think that anyone could like me for real? I asked when I had his complete attention. He responded with a startled expression that became dismayed.
No,
he denied.
Of course I don't think that.
But that's what you just said, I told him. Good luck with that. I imitated him. That means you don't think I can make friends.
It's not you, Ella. It's other people. Most of them are just users who only like you when they can get something from you. That's what I meant by wishing you luck finding real friends.
Oh, I responded, feeling somewhat mollified. Well, I don't think that everyone is like that. But I'm not rich like you, so I don't have anything they can use me for anyway. He gave me an enigmatic look.
Don't be so sure.
I didn't know what that look meant, but it made me nervous. So I turned away from him and began to stride through the parking lot. He kept pace with me until we reached the building, and he hurried forward to open the door for me.
So,
He said, his gaze lingering on me.
Whoever breaks the rules first loses the bet.
I could feel my eyes go wide with my startled response, because I hadn't really taken this bet seriously.
You said it's on.
Mason reminded me.
You could get your poem back.
He continued, dangling the carrot in front of me. And you won't retaliate? I demanded. You won't spread any more lies about me and my mom?
I won't.
He agreed.
If I can't be the boyfriend you want, then I'll let you go.
It was an offer I couldn't refuse. I had no doubt that he would lose the bet, and I could now see freedom within my reach. Okay, I said. It's a deal.
And you agree to what I want if I win?
He queried. My stomach dipped at the thought of it, but I was confident that I wouldn't have to go through with it. Yes, but no touching, I added, just to be on the safe side.
Not unless you ask me to,
he said with a heated gaze.
I didn't last time, because you weren't sober. No drinking this time. I want you completely aware of what you're doing.
That same forbidden excitement rippled through me, and I hastily put an end to the conversation. Okay, I've gotta go. Bye.
Wait.
I stopped in the process of rushing off and impatiently turned back toward him. What? He stepped up to me with a warm smile that I had never seen him direct at anyone.
I'll see you later, Ella. Are you sure you don't want me to walk you to class?
No, thanks, I replied.
Okay,
he said, and kept smiling at me in that disconcerting way. I felt compelled to give him a quick wave goodbye before taking off. Puzzling over his behavior, I finally realized when I was out of sight of him that he was acting that way because of the bet. He was being considerate and pleasant, and it was very strange. Hey, Ella, a girl greeted me. I focused and saw Erin approaching me. Hey, Erin, I replied. So, I was wondering if you'll go to a concert with me, she said. A concert? I queried in confusion. Taylor Swift, she told me. This Friday, I've got an extra ticket, so... I looked at her suspiciously. Did Mason put you up to this? What? She questioned, appearing bewildered. He suggested that I should be friends with you, and all of a sudden you're inviting me to a concert? That's an awful big coincidence, I remarked. It is, she agreed excitedly. I was hoping we could be friends, and I'm glad to know that he wants us to be friends too. I'm so glad he's finally dating someone nice, because he's such a nice guy. I regarded her incredulously. How much is he paying you to say that? Nothing, she replied, looking utterly confused for a moment. Oh, she said, as she apparently had some kind of a realization. Moving closer to me, she spoke quietly. He told me not to tell people about him being nice, so don't let him know I told you, but he helped me when my boyfriend broke up with me. He said it was okay to wait as long as I wanted to have sex, and that I should never let anyone pressure me into anything, and he said that I was still part of his group no matter what. I stared at her as I tried to reconcile the Mason she was describing with the one I knew. She glanced around before leaning closer to me and dropping her voice to a near whisper. I know that Alicia would have kicked me out if Mason hadn't stood up for me. Alicia had certainly done it before, most notably when she had edged out Brooke as Queen Bee after Mason broke up with her. He hadn't done a thing to stop Alicia from ruthlessly usurping her power and kicking her out of his group. From what I had heard, nobody talked to her when she sat at their table, and she had left the cafeteria in tears. While I hadn't felt a bit of sympathy for her after how she had bullied my friends, it had been yet another example of Mason's cruelty. Unlike me, she hadn't withstood it for long, and she had transferred to another school. "So anyway," Erin said as she moved back out of my personal space, "my boyfriend was supposed to go to the concert with me, but—" She trailed off with a sigh before pinning a hopeful gaze on me. "Will you go with me, Ella? I know it's short notice, but, I'll understand if you can't." I could see how desperately she wanted me to go with her, and I couldn't turn her down. "Okay, I'll go." Happiness shone on her face. "Oh, thank you, Ella." "No problem," I told her. I like Taylor Swift. What I didn't tell her is that I often listened to Shake It Off to psych myself up to face another day at this school. "Oh, it's going to be so much fun," she gushed. "Oh, I should get your number, and you should have mine." We exchanged numbers, and I couldn't help getting excited about making a friend and having plans with her. We parted when the warning bell rang, and I drifted off to class on a cloud of contentment. Until I received a text from Mason.
I miss you already. Can't wait to see you again.
I rolled my eyes, thinking that he was really overdoing it. Then I realized that I was doing nothing to win this bet. I racked my brain, trying to think of a response that would top him, but I couldn't come up with anything. My mind rebelled at the words I had settled on, but I sent them anyway. "Miss you too." His response got an actual smile out of me.
Liar.
Inspiration struck, and I typed with quick enthusiasm. "Yeah, but you started it."
Not true. I really can't wait to see you. It's always the most exciting part of my day.
I stared at the words, trying to tamp down on the feeling they gave me and convince myself that they were just part of this stupid bet. The truth came out in my response. "You've always been the most exciting part of my day, too, even when I hated you." I immediately regretted sending him that text, but I consoled myself that he would think it was just bullshit for the bet. His response came quickly.
You don't hate me anymore?
I struggled over how to respond until I came up with what I thought was the perfect sarcastic reply. "How can I when you're such a great boyfriend?" There was no response from Mason, and I settled back in my seat in satisfaction as class began. All I had to do was wait for him to lose this bet, and I was sure that it wouldn't take long. Words were easy, but his actions would trip him up. He wouldn't be able to contain his true nature, and then I would finally be free of him. My eyes zeroed in on Josh, and I caught him watching me. Speaking of being free, I thought, even though his gaze slid away from me. I knew that he was interested, and that many guys who saw me were attracted to me. I didn't often reflect on my looks, since it was a hated reminder of how much I looked like my mother. I hadn't ever wanted to use my beauty the way she did, but I knew that I turned male heads, and that the only thing holding them back from approaching me was Mason. Josh was no exception. "Hey," I said to him, as I hurried to catch him at his desk after class and slip him the piece of paper I had prepared for him. "Here's my number. You can text me any time." He looked at me in surprise, but shoved the paper into his pocket. None too soon, either, since Mason appeared in the doorway as we approached it. He was apparently continuing to play the caring boyfriend and had come to walk me to the class we had together.
So, did you get to talk to anyone you want to be friends with?
He asked. "Only the person you want me to be friends with," I retorted, still a bit annoyed over his interruption of my planned talk with Josh.
Erin, how did that go?
He inquired. "We're going to a concert on Friday. Taylor Swift," I revealed with a short laugh, remembering how we had just mentioned her yesterday. He responded with a laugh himself.
That's a funny coincidence. We were just talking about her concerts. I told you it's a girl thing.
"Hey," I admonished him. "Stop being a sexist jerk." Realization immediately dawned on his face.
You're right. I'm sorry.
I laughed at him. You are trying so damn hard. It's hilarious. I should really torture you and make you do all kinds of things you hate to prove you're a good boyfriend. Too bad Aaron doesn't have another ticket.
If you want me to go to the concert, I will,
he said. Yeah, right, I replied. It's probably sold out by now anyway.
There are always scalpers selling tickets for double their worth,
he told me.
All you have to do is say the word and I'll go with you.
I'm actually looking forward to some girl time, I told him, and then wondered why I felt the need to explain my rejection of his offer. I should have just said that I'd rather go with anyone else but him. Oh, but the bet, I remembered. I was supposed to be considerate of his feelings, as if he had any.
What's that look for?
He questioned.
What did I do?
Nothing, sweetheart, I said with false sweetness. You're perfect.
Hey,
he said, and gently took hold of my arm to steer me to the side and out of the way of all the students walking through the hallway.
What's wrong?
Nothing, honey bunch, I replied, laying it on thick. You're the best boyfriend in the world.
Okay, stop with that, he demanded. Part of this is talking, so be honest.
You want me to be honest? I questioned rhetorically. I don't think so. That wouldn't be very considerate of your feelings, sweetheart. You're not going to trick me into losing this bet, I added derisively.
Forget about the damned bet,
he retorted.
I won't hold it against you to be honest about your feelings. You probably need to vent at me before you can forgive me, so let it out.
What if I can't forgive you? I shot back. Did you ever think of that? Huh? No, of course you didn't, because it would never occur to you that you might not get your way. He seemed completely taken aback by my rant, and his expression became troubled.
But there has to be something I can do to earn your forgiveness,
he exclaimed.
I know it'll take time, and I'm not expecting it to happen overnight. I know I did a lot of shitty things, so I've got a lot to make up for. But it's not impossible.
I just regarded him with a flat expression and said nothing in response.
Think up things for me to do to atone,
he demanded in frustration.
I'll prove to you that I'm sorry.
The bell rang, and I huffed in annoyance. Now I'm late again. I'm not going to have the teachers thinking bad of me, too. I rushed away from him and hurried down the hall to the classroom. I was aware of him right behind me, but I ignored him as we quickly took our seats. Unfortunately, our classmates had saved us seats right next to each other again, and I could see Mason watching me out of my peripheral vision. I was therefore tense and distracted the entire time, and barely able to focus on the lecture. Although I would be able to make up for it by reading the textbook, it still irked me that Mason could affect my concentration. I was so glad to put him out of sight, since he wasn't in my next class. I smiled in triumph when I received a text from Josh.
Now you have my number too.
He was being cautious with what he wrote me, and I knew that he wouldn't dare make a move unless I did first. I was so unfamiliar with flirting, though, so I just decided to be straightforward. I'd like to see you outside of school.
Did Mason break up with you?
I thought for a minute about how to word my reply and just ended up going with honesty. No, this has nothing to do with him. Can we have our own thing? It took him a while to respond, but he agreed.
As long as we're very careful. He can't find out, ever.
I smiled in amusement at his paranoia. Our secret. I promise. I'll let you know when I can see you.
Okay. Can't wait.
I was excited at the prospect of a clandestine rendezvous. My life was becoming more adventurous and busy. There were suddenly all these possibilities, and I resented Mason anew for denying me all of this for so long. I walked into the cafeteria with fire in my blood this time and took my place beside him like it was my right. He owed me much more than a seat at his table, but he flabbergasted me when he stood up and shouted to get the attention of everyone in the vicinity.
Hey, everyone listen. I've got something to tell you.
He continued to speak loudly, even as the room went silent.
I lied to everyone about Ella Chase. Her mother is not an escort. I made that up because there is some bad blood between our families. Ella is a nice girl who didn't deserve any of the crap I threw at her, and I'm very sorry for the way I treated her.
His gaze swept over the people seated in the cafeteria before focusing on me.
I'm sorry I was an asshole to you, Ella. Please forgive me.
Heat flared in my cheeks from the embarrassment of being put on the spot like that, and I stared at him in dismay. His gaze lifted from mine, and his voice rang out again.
Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Go back to what you were doing.
He sat down, and conversation resumed, although a lot of it was about us, judging by how many eyes I felt watching me. I still hadn't recovered enough to respond, and everyone else at our table remained silent too. Alicia was the first one to open her mouth. "So now you're going to change her from a hooker into a good girl?" she sneered. "What is this? Pretty woman? Are you in love?"
Shut up, Alicia,
Mason snapped.
I told you never to call her that again.
"Or what?" she challenged. "You'll break my leg? I thought you guys had some kind of honor code about not hurting women."
Hey, Josh exclaimed. Is she in the family too? I mean, like a rival family? You said there was bad blood between your families. Is that what you meant?
"Like a Romeo and Juliet situation," Erin commented excitedly.
Well,
Mason said.
I can't talk about that kind of stuff, but...
He let the sentence hang as he fixed a hard gaze on Alicia.
You might not want to mess with Ella. Let's just say that the women in her family can be lethal, and they don't follow the same rules as my family.
I stared at him in shock over how easily he had been able to use the word lethal in relation to my mom, like it didn't bother him at all, when I knew how deep that wound still was. My reaction apparently helped to sell his story, because Alicia looked at me with a wary gaze. "Sorry," she muttered.
Don't let it happen again,
Mason replied for me, and I felt like I was in some kind of an alternate reality where he was on my side and Alicia was afraid of me. Josh added to the effect when he pulled me aside in the hallway later that day.
So, you're some kind of mafia princess?
He asked me secretively. I shook my head at him. I can't believe how you people buy into all of his bullshit.
I know you can't talk about it,
he continued, as if I hadn't just refuted it all as bullshit.
I'm just glad to know that Mason isn't forcing you.
I practically melted at those words. What a sweetheart. Mason had told me that Josh was a selfish player, but Mason was a liar. I had witnessed it often enough myself, and I should know better than to trust anything he said. Thanks, I told Josh sincerely. I really appreciate that you care.
A guy forcing himself on a girl is not a real man,
he declared vehemently.
My dad told me how he beat the crap out of a guy who did that. The girl was too ashamed to press charges, but my dad and his buddies took care of him for her.
My eyes were wide with amazement. Wow, I breathed, impressed and imagining his dad going after bad guys vigilante style. Josh had just become more interesting to me, and I was now hanging on his every word. His fierce expression changed as he looked at me, and it was one I recognized as male interest in me. I found it flattering, coming from a decent guy like him, and I suddenly felt shy about flirting my way into kissing him. You're a great guy, I told him bashfully. He looked away from me for a moment, and then returned his gaze to me.
You're a special girl, Ella. I don't like going behind Mason's back. I wouldn't normally ever do that to a friend, but I can't stop thinking about you. I know it's wrong, but...
Mason and I aren't really... I began, wanting to put his mind at ease. I can't go into the reasons why, but we're only pretending to date. Don't tell anyone that, I pleaded.
Okay,
he agreed uncertainly, looking confounded by my revelation.
So, he won't care if we—
"Oh, he'll care," I interjected, and then scrambled for an explanation. "He doesn't want people to know we're faking, so he wouldn't want people to think I'm cheating with you." As soon as those words were out of my mouth, I suddenly realized the consequences for me. I hadn't even considered my defiance against Mason as cheating, but now it hit me that it would violate the terms of our bet. "He can't find out," I said urgently.
Then people shouldn't see us talking like this.
Josh replied with a quick, nervous glance at the stream of students walking past us in the hallway. "You're right," I agreed. "I'd better go." I rushed off anxiously, worried now that someone would tell Mason about me and Josh. He couldn't get me for just talking to him, though. That wasn't cheating. I hadn't actually done anything yet, and it wasn't too late to call the whole thing off. Two things prevented me from doing that. One was that it bothered me that Mason held the distinction of being the only guy I had kissed, and I wanted to change that as soon as possible. The second thing was that I could actually see myself falling for Josh, and I didn't want to let go of him now that I had found a guy I liked, especially not because of Mason. I wouldn't let him stand in my way yet again. I was going to have what I wanted for once. I drifted into pleasant daydreams in class as I imagined going to homecoming and prom with Josh and posing for pictures together at both dances. Which was why my reaction to Mason asking me to homecoming was doubly disturbing. Excitement coursed through me as I immediately pictured myself dancing in his arms. I just barely suppressed the urge to exclaim yes, but I managed to regain my composure and answer him in what I hoped was cool detachment. "You're getting a little ahead of yourself. Homecoming is a ways away."
2 months,
he said.
I want to go to prom with you too, but I think it's too early to ask you to that.
I turned my head to stare at him and stumbled with my attention not on where I was going. Mason quickly took hold of me to steady me, and we came to a stop with one of his hands on my waist and the other on my arm. The contact felt good, and attraction sparked between us as our gazes locked. My breathing became uneven as he bent his head closer to mine, and I closed my eyes in anticipation.
Ella,
he said, the sound of his voice and the feel of his breath ghosting over my lips, sending a thrill through me.
I want to kiss you.
My heartbeat kept pace with the frenzied fluttering in my stomach as my anticipation became nearly unbearable. "Please," I breathed.
Do you want me to kiss you, Ella? I can't until you ask me to.
Even as feeling him speak the words made my lips tingle with desire. The reason he was saying them penetrated through the haze of my lust. My rules. He had promised not to kiss me until I asked him to. I'd finally gotten Mason to follow one of my rules, and I had almost given up the little bit of power I had over him. My eyes snapped open, and I pushed him away. Heat flared in my cheeks over how close I had come to succumbing to him again. Even worse was that desperate please I had voiced. I expected him to taunt me with that, and I turned face and fled toward where my bus was parked. Mason quickly caught up to me and got in my way.
Where are you going?
He demanded.
I'm driving you home.
No, I argued. I'm taking the bus.
Don't be difficult.
He snapped.
I didn't break the rules, so you have no reason to.
I am difficult, I declared. You should just break up with me right now if you want an easy girlfriend. His lips twitched in amusement.
I know you're not easy.
You know what I mean, I retorted, too annoyed to be embarrassed by the sexual implications of that word.
I do know what you mean,
he said, and fixed an intense gaze on me.
Either way, I don't care if you're not easy. You're mine, and I'm not breaking up with you.
My heartbeat accelerated again, and I had to look away from him to be able to think. You said you'd be considerate of my feelings, I finally said, and I feel like taking the bus home.
Fine.
he relented in frustration.
Go on the damn bus.
I needed no further encouragement and bolted around him. He scowled, but made no move to stop me this time. Distance from him was exactly what I needed to stop craving that kiss we almost had. Why was I so incredibly attracted to him? It didn't help that he started sending me text messages as soon as I got on the bus, and I wasn't strong enough to resist reading them.
I want to kiss you so bad I can't stand it. Your lips were so close I could almost taste them. I wanted to lick them and suck them and slide my tongue into your mouth. I want to kiss you deep and long.
It hardly seemed like he was referring to kissing anymore, and my body was responding to his deliberately sexual choice of words, which was probably his intention. Vowing to ignore his texts, I nevertheless immediately read the next one he sent.
You were so sexy, all breathless and ready for me.
I finally replied to him, Stop texting and driving.
Do you care if something happens to me? Would you miss me?
I was taken aback by those questions and was at a loss at how to respond. No seemed like too harsh of an answer. I thought about being free of him that way, but felt no satisfaction imagining it. I don't want anything to happen to you.
But would you miss me?
I didn't want to deal with that question. Don't make me find out. Stop texting and driving.
I'm still in the school parking lot, wishing you were here with me, so I could kiss you.
I smiled at his reply. Go home.
Come over, please.
I was sorely tempted to do just that and indulge in the kissing he was offering me. I just barely restrained myself by thinking about how much he would gloat if I gave in. Getting a text from Josh also helped.
Hi, Ella. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I have ice cream.
That one was from Mason, and the rest of it was more temptation.
I want to kiss you after you eat it. Your mouth will be cold and sweet, and mine will be hot and hungry after watching you take delicious spoonfuls. Good. Was wondering when we can get together to work on that class project.
That one was from Josh, and I appreciated how cautious and careful he was being about texting me. I was careful in my response, only in making sure that I was sending it to him and not Mason. Damn him. I was now craving not only him, but ice cream as well. I was glad to have Josh for a distraction. How about now? I'm almost home. Do you have a way to get here? I texted him my address too.
I have a car. Not as nice as some people's cars, but it runs. We'll be there soon.
That was clearly a reference to Mason's nice car, and I wondered if Josh was jealous over it. I wondered if he would still be jealous if he knew that Mason lived alone. Maybe he did know, since they were friends. Why was I still thinking about Mason? I should be excited about seeing Josh and thinking about kissing Josh, so that I could stop thinking about kissing Mason. I could so clearly imagine it that I could almost taste the cold ice cream in my mouth, and how it would feel to have Mason's hot mouth mingle with that coldness.
Guess I'll have to go home and eat that ice cream by myself.
I knew that was meant to entice me, but it actually seemed like a forlorn statement about how alone he was, living there by himself. He didn't deserve my sympathy, though, since he'd never had any for me. He had been mean and ruthless and done everything in his power to make me miserable. I wasn't going to allow myself to soften towards him now that he'd supposedly given up on his vendetta against me. I didn't want to be with him. It was much too late for that. I was going to start fresh with a new guy, a guy who truly was considerate and deserving of my attention. Josh had all the attributes of a great boyfriend, and he was attractive too. Not as attractive as Mason, but still much better than average. He was the one I would kiss. Then I would forget all about kissing Mason. Damn it, I had to stop thinking about Mason. Once I saw Josh, it was a little easier to focus entirely on him. His timing was perfect, because he pulled into my driveway just as I reached my front door. I went to meet him as he exited his car, and I took a better look at him than I had before. He really was handsome with his dark, good looks. His eyes were a deep brown that I noticed could really draw you in when they were focused on you with that sensual look he was giving me now. "Hey," I greeted him flirtatiously, finding it surprisingly easy to flirt with him.
"Hey,"
he responded, and wasted no time closing the distance between us. He leaned in and pressed his lips to mine in a brief, tentative kiss. Pulling back, he smiled at me.
"Hey,"
he repeated. "Hey," I responded as I smiled back at him. It was a sweet and cute, real boyfriend kind of thing to do, and it would have been the perfect, innocent first kiss if Mason hadn't gotten there first and ruined it for me. My first kiss with him had been so hot and exciting that it completely overshadowed this tame kiss with Josh. That was because I hadn't gotten to that point with Josh yet, though. He was pacing himself and doing things the right way, while nothing with Mason was the way it was supposed to be. He had skipped right over a proper first kiss and seduced me into French kissing him. No, I chided myself. I wasn't going to think about Mason while I was with Josh. I could finally let things happen naturally with a guy I liked, without Mason's interference. So, I just had to be patient and let Josh sweep me off my feet. "Do you want to come in?" I invited him, and it all felt so proper and stilted. "This is what you want," I admonished myself. "A nice guy who respects you. This was the way it was supposed to be. It would take time to form a connection and lose our inhibitions with each other. We weren't supposed to feel wild passion for each other immediately. My messed up experiences with Mason had skewed my expectations." Ugh, I felt like screaming in frustration at myself for letting my thoughts constantly circle back to the last guy I should ever be thinking about. "Josh," I said, to reinforce my focus on him. "I'm glad you're here. I've always liked you."
"Yeah?"
he questioned, looking pleased. "Yes," I lied, although it was partially true. I had liked him since I started paying attention to him at Mason's party, but I had barely noticed him before that. I could have had a crush on him for all he knew, so there was no harm in letting him think that.
"I like you too, Ella,"
he told me.
"You're—"
"Well, hi there." Mom interrupted him and threw an impressed look at me. "Who is this fine young man, Ella?" "This is Josh," I replied. "Josh, this is my mom." I introduced her reluctantly, hoping that she wouldn't say anything embarrassing. Her gaze was already on him again as I spoke, and she was blatantly ogling him. That was sadly not that surprising to me, considering how she had checked out Mason, albeit with a bit more subtleness since my dad had been home then. What was more unexpected was how Josh was staring at her. Yeah, she was flaunting her body in her short shorts and midriff-bearing tank top, but he wasn't even trying to look away. Her ego inflated like a hot air balloon, and her smile grew even more vain and self-satisfied. "Hello, Josh. It's so nice to meet you," she flirted. He seemed momentarily speechless before responding in an apparent daze.
"Yes."
Having had enough, I took action to remove him from her presence. "We're going to my room," I announced, and took hold of his hand to lead him away. He went with me, but turned his head to look back at her. It was disappointing to see this weakness in him, and disturbing to realize that Mason had withstood her sexual allure better than Josh. Then again, Mason hated my mother. But he had hated me too, and that hadn't stopped him from being attracted to me. The realization that I was thinking about Mason again prompted me to aggressively kiss Josh as soon as we entered my room. I wanted to drive all thoughts of Mason out of my head and replace him with Josh. He was startled at first, but he was soon kissing me back. I tried to replicate the passion I had experienced with Mason, and I threw myself into the kiss with determination. I pulled him into me and plunged my tongue into his mouth in search of the spark that would inflame me. But I couldn't find it. I was too aware of myself and what I was doing, and too able to evaluate how he was kissing me instead of becoming lost in the sensations I was feeling. There was nothing wrong with his technique, but he was lacking the hot, hungry urgency that Mason had when he kissed me, like he couldn't get enough of me. His kiss didn't thrill me, even when he got more into it and started running his hands down my back and slipped them under my shirt to touch my skin. I pulled away from him and took a step back. He looked at me with a heated gaze, and I wondered why I wasn't as attracted to him as I was to Mason. It didn't matter, though, because Josh was the kind of guy I should be with. He wasn't antagonistic or cruel, and I could have a normal relationship with him. That was more important than lust. In fact, I should be glad that I didn't have to worry about succumbing to temptation and going too far with him. He would be the perfect first boyfriend for me.
So,
he said. I just let the word hang between us. So, I trailed off too, as I sought the words to establish the relationship we had begun. Do you want to be, do you want to go out with me? I asked awkwardly.
you mean date?
He questioned. Yes, I answered. It would have to be a secret for now, just until I break up with Mason. Not that we're really dating, but he can't know about us yet. Josh ran a hand through his hair and expelled a breath forcefully.
Are you sure that you can keep this a secret? I mean, you can't tell anyone, not even your best friend.
I don't have a best friend anymore, I told him. She turned out to be a backstabbing bitch.
Good,
he responded, before realizing what he'd said.
I mean, good that you won't be telling her. But I know that you wouldn't anyway, since you know how dangerous he is.
I snorted. Mason is not dangerous. That mafia story he told you is all bullshit. Seriously, Josh, he's just a liar.
Then why are you afraid of him finding out about us?
He challenged. I'm not afraid, I insisted. Well, I hedged. I'm not afraid of Mason. It's just that we made this bet and I don't want to lose. Josh's expression became bewildered.
A bet? About what?
I can't tell you, I replied. But I have to wait until he loses it to break up with him. If he finds out about this before then, I'll lose.
Okay,
he said uncertainly, obviously not sure what to believe. So, I began in a tentative tone, we can go out? As long as we keep it a secret? His expression smoothed out as he studied me, and his voice sounded more confident when he spoke.
We probably can't go out on dates if we want to keep this a secret, Ella. If someone sees us out together, it'll get back to Mason. It's best to meet in private like this, don't you think?
Disappointment deflated my hopeful mood. Mason was still ruining things for me, even unknowingly. I'd managed to defy him, but it wasn't the satisfying victory I had expected. I had wanted to go out on real dates with Josh and get the full boyfriend experience that I had missed out on. But Mason was still preventing me from having that. You're right, I acknowledged, and Josh smiled at me. He seemed okay with this situation at least. He could have just decided that it wasn't worth the trouble of sneaking around and being so limited about where we could go, but he was willing to do this for me. He must really like me if he was willing to wait for me to be free. That thought buoyed my spirits, and I smiled back at him.
So,
he said as he stepped closer to me.
Where were we?
I backed away as he leaned in for a kiss, and I didn't think to question that instinct until later. The notification of a text message on my phone saved me from having to come up with an excuse for dodging his kiss. I snapped to attention when I saw it was from Mason.
I'm eating that ice cream and thinking of you as I lick it off the spoon. Come over and get some, Ella.
The heat that had been absent from my interactions with Josh flared within me as I read Mason's message. "He's coming over," I lied. "You have to go." Josh reacted in panic, and I felt bad. "He's just leaving his house now. It'll take him some time to get here," I assured him as I followed him in his rush out of my room. He didn't answer as he hurried down the stairs and yanked open the front door to dash out to his car. I ran outside after him, but he didn't spare me a look as he got in his car and peeled out of my driveway. Despite everything I'd said, his fear of Mason apparently hadn't lessened one bit. He believed Mason over me, but I tried not to hold that against him. After all, he had known Mason much longer than he had known me, and hadn't I just lied to him myself? The question was why? Why had I wanted Josh to leave? Why hadn't I wanted him to kiss me again? And why was I still tempted to go see Mason? Ice cream, I decided. I wanted ice cream. That was the only reason. My first instinct was to call Zoe, but then I remembered that she was still in school, since the middle school got out later than the high school. Recalling my desire to make friends, I thought of Erin first, but I had already connected with her today, and she also had an unfortunate association with Mason. I was suddenly desperate for someone who could make me forget about him, and I knew just the person. She was from the time before Mason had wreaked havoc with my life, and I was nostalgic for those simple, uncomplicated times. I wasn't sure if she still had the same phone number, so I just went to her house and rang the doorbell. Alice stood there staring at me when she answered the door. "Hi," I said. "Want to go get ice cream? My treat." She glanced around warily, like someone might be lying in wait off to the side of me, beyond her sight. "I wish I could, Ella, but—" "It's okay," I assured her. "Mason is not going to retaliate against you. He said I can be friends with whoever I want." Her gaze sharpened, and her mouth compressed in disapproval before she spoke. "That's it, Ella. You need to go to the police. It was bad enough when he was bullying you, but you can't let him abuse you like this." "What?" I exclaimed. "Why would you think he's abusing me? He's never hit me or anything. All he did was tell people lies about me. That's all. He's an asshole, but he's not abusive." "You have to have his permission to have friends?" she countered. "That's one of the signs of an abusive boyfriend. He isolates you from people so that you have nobody but him." "But he's doing the opposite," I argued. "He's stopped doing all that, and now he's letting me make friends." "Letting you?" Alice repeated scornfully. "What a great boyfriend. He's letting you do something that you have every right to do. Open your eyes, Ella. You have to see how screwed up that is." I sighed heavily. "I do know how screwed up it is, and you don't even know the half of it." Her righteous anger was replaced with a troubled expression, and she pulled the door open wider. "Come in," she invited me solemnly. I stepped inside hesitantly, glancing around at the familiar surroundings where I'd once felt so comfortable and welcome. Alice had been my best friend in middle school, and we had spent lots of time over each other's houses. She had tried to secretly continue our friendship outside of school after Mason started targeting my friends, but I had been too paranoid about him finding out and causing more trouble for her. I wouldn't even let her text me or call me for fear that he was somehow keeping tabs on my phone. I had severed all ties with her in order to protect her, and being back here was a bittersweet reminder of the time I had lost with her. We had only just started high school the last time I was here, and we were seniors now. We had once known everything about each other, but things had changed for both of us since that innocent, carefree time in our lives when neither of us had yet been kissed. I wasn't sure where to start to bridge the gap of those years. "Nobody else is home," Alice told me, "so we can talk without worrying about anyone overhearing us." I smiled faintly, because we were the ones who were always eavesdropping on the conversations of her older sister and her friends. "How is Madison?" I inquired. "Good," Alice replied. "She's a sophomore at UCF, so she actually did more than work on her tan last year. I thought for sure she just had her sights set on the beaches when she picked a college in Florida, but she's doing really well. I guess she really did find her passion." "Oh?" I responded in surprise. "What's she taking?" "Theme park management," Alice answered. "I didn't even know that major existed, but leave it to Madison to find the only college in the country that has it." "That's actually perfect for her," I said, marveling over it. "She always loved working at Six Flags." "I know," Alice agreed. "But I didn't know she could make a career out of that. I expected her to try to become a professional cheerleader for one of those NFL teams." That wasn't a far-fetched assumption, since Madison had been into cheerleading from a young age and had ended up being captain of the cheerleading squad in high school. She was as popular and outgoing as Alice was shy and introverted. They were polar opposites, but they got along all right, despite the typical sibling squabbling. I had often wished that I had a sister too, and I wondered if Mason wished that he had a brother or sister. Then he wouldn't be living in that house alone, and he would have family by his side. Even if they argued and got on each other's nerves, he would still... Shit, I was thinking about Mason again. I had to stop that. I didn't care about him or his troubles. Poor little rich boy. Who cared if he was lonely or abandoned? That was his bullshit excuse to act like an asshole. If he was a decent person, then he would have had real friends to fill the void of his absent mother and deceased father. His dad was a selfish bastard anyway. And Mason had been away at boarding school, so it wasn't like he wasn't used to being away from his parents. I started to imagine him in a Harry Potter situation, unwanted by his family, and being taken to an enormous school where he didn't know anyone. Had he made any real friends there? I remembered then that it had been his choice to leave that place and move here, so he must not have been attached to it if he could leave it behind so easily. For me. My heart skipped a beat at the thought of him coming for me, but it wasn't like that. He had been hell-bent on revenge rather than prompted by passion and desire. I was romanticizing him again, and I had to stop before I lost my resolve. I couldn't let him win. "So, you and Mason," Alice said, making me snap guiltily back to attention with the uneasy feeling that she had guessed that I was thinking about him. "How did that happen?" My skin flushed with embarrassment, and I tried to make up a story she might believe. I couldn't do it, though, because she was my best friend, and I had never lied to her before. "I've got a lot to tell you," I said. She nodded. "Yeah, I would guess so. Let's sit down," she suggested. "Do you want something to drink?" "That's what got me in trouble in the first place," I muttered, flashing back in disgust on Addison urging me to drink. Alice raised an eyebrow as she regarded me, and heat crept over my face again. Just water, please," I told her. "Have a seat," she replied, and gestured toward the living room before walking off to the kitchen. I used the short time she was gone to compose myself and attempt to plan out what I was going to say. I was standing nervously beside the couch when she returned with 2 bottles of water. "It's okay, Ella," she said. "You know you can tell me anything, so relax and stop wringing your hands like I'm going to punish you. This isn't the principal's office." "Yeah, I heard about that," she added when I looked at her sheepishly. "You must have been a nervous wreck knowing you." "I was," I confirmed, relaxing a bit with the realization of how well she knew me, and that she wouldn't judge me as harshly as people who didn't and make assumptions about my character. She handed me one of the water bottles, and I sat down on the couch as she sat down on the coffee table in front of me. I smiled at this little quirk of hers that her mother always yelled at her for. It was such a familiar memory. Alice always liked to sit on the coffee table. When we were talking, she would face me like she was now. When we were watching TV, she would sit on the other side, closer to the TV, and lean forward as she gazed at the screen. "I've missed you so much," I said, my voice suddenly heavy with emotion. "Me too," she responded, with the same emotion in her words and her expression. "I missed you, Ella. It hasn't been the same without you, and I hated him for doing this to us. And I know that you hate him too. So how has he forced you to be with him?" she demanded. "I know that you wouldn't be if he wasn't forcing you." I hoped that she would attribute the deep blush staining my cheeks red to what I was about to tell her, because I would be ashamed for her to know that I was still attracted to him after everything that he had done. "Addison tricked me into getting drunk, and he took a naked picture of me." Alice gaped at me in shock before regaining the ability to speak. "That's blackmail. You have to go to the police," she exclaimed in outrage. "He deleted it," I told her quickly. "But, he's got something else. A poem I wrote. About him," I admitted reluctantly. She blinked as she absorbed that and tried to make sense of it. "A poem? Who cares?" Heat suffused my face. "It's a sexual poem. I wrote it before I knew how he was," I lied, my shame greater than my hatred of lying to her. "It's on the back of an old homework paper and it's got my name on it." "He could have written it himself for all anybody knows," she declared. "He's got nothing." "You know how people always believe him," I said. "They believed that he was in the freaking mafia, for goodness sake." "What?" she asked in dismay. I filled her in on his story of being in witness protection and alluding to ties to the mafia, and we both laughed at the utter ridiculousness of it. "Did you tell them where he really got his money from?" she questioned. I sobered. "No, I didn't want to get into that." Alice was the only person I had told about my mom's connection to Mason's dad. I knew that she wasn't responsible for his death, but him dying in bed with her wasn't something I wanted to advertise. Alice understood that. "You could have just told them that your mom worked as a maid in his house," she suggested. I waved that off. "It doesn't matter what they believe about him." "It would prove that he's been lying to them," she argued. "It's still his word against mine," I retorted. "And they always believe him." "So what?" she said. "Even if they believe you wrote that poem, so what? They believed much worse things about you and you got through it. This is nothing compared to that." I averted my gaze from hers, unable to look her in the eye with the shameful answer floating around in my head. Because those things weren't true, and this was. That was why I couldn't just shrug it off. That was why I didn't want anyone to know. "Ella," she began, and the suspicion in her voice made my heart pound that she had figured it out and was about to call me out on it. "Did he really delete that picture, or is he still blackmailing you with it?" I breathed in relief. "He deleted it. Mr. Delaney even looked through his phone after Addison accused him of having it, and it was gone." "So Addison told on him?" Alice asked. "She felt guilty for getting you drunk? But wait, how did he get a picture of you? Were you at a party?" "We were at her house," I explained bitterly. "She set me up." I went on to elaborate on Addison's betrayal and how she had only been pretending to be my friend. "That's awful," Alice said, seeming to momentarily lose herself in somber contemplation of it. When her gaze refocused on me, a look of reproach entered her eyes. "Why'd you decide to be friends with her?" I heard the note of hurt in her voice, and I realized that she thought I had chosen Addison over her. "Because she was the only one who would let me be friends with," I explained. "She wasn't important to me, so I took a chance when she started talking to me. I kept thinking that he was going to do something to stop her, but he didn't. Now I know why. He was using her to get to me." "And this is the guy you're dating," she remarked. "I think I'd rather be embarrassed in front of everyone than go out with him." "We're not really dating," I said. We're just pretending to because I trailed off, since I didn't have a good reason for that, besides Mason demanding that I do it. Well, anyway, he's not really my boyfriend. So how long are you going to pretend that he is? She questioned. And why would he need to pretend to have a girlfriend when he can easily get a real one? Girls are constantly flirting with him. I felt a stab of jealousy at the reminder, and I chose to focus solely on her first question. Until he loses our bet, I replied. He bet me that he could be a good boyfriend, and he'll give me back my poem when he loses. Alice regarded me with a perplexed expression. What are the criteria of him being a good boyfriend? What does he have to do to lose the bet? Cheat, be inconsiderate of my feelings, basically be himself, I stated. There is no way he can win this bet. What does he get if he wins? My gaze slid away from hers as I shifted my legs nervously. It's impossible for him to win. This is Mason we're talking about. He could never be a good boyfriend. You should have seen the way he treated Addison. I would have felt sorry for her if she wasn't such a backstabbing bitch. He was her boyfriend? Alice asked in surprise. When? I never heard anything about that. That's because he dumped her the same day he went public with her. But he was secretly her boyfriend the whole time she was pretending to be my friend. That's why she helped him set me up. Wow, that is messed up, Alice said. I guess it really backfired on her when he dumped her for you. What? He didn't, I denied. She gave me a pointed look. Come on, Ella. He broke up with his girlfriend so that you could pretend to be his girlfriend? That doesn't make any sense. He obviously wants to be with you. Well, I don't want to be with him, I retorted. You did once, she reminded me. This would have been your dream come true back then. Are you really doing this because of some silly poem? Or are you living out your fantasy from middle school? She knew me so well, and she had hit right at the heart of my conflicted feelings for Mason. She was the only one I had told about him, and she had witnessed some of my heartbreak over him before he severed our friendship. I'm not sure, I admitted, deciding to share some of the truth with her. Sometimes it feels like that. Like when he wore the tux and acted like my boyfriend. It was how I used to imagine him before I knew what he was really like. I heard that he apologized to you in the cafeteria today in front of all of his friends, she said. He did, I confirmed. He told them he's been lying about me and my mom. So you forgave him? She asked. No, I declared. He doesn't get to just say he's sorry after all of that. Did you tell him that? She questioned. Yeah, I replied. He says he's going to make it up to me, but I don't see how he can. I'm just going to get my poem back and be done with him. She regarded me with a troubled expression. Do you really think he'll let you? He hasn't left you alone the whole time he's been here. What makes you think it'll be different now? Because it will be, I stated. I couldn't explain it to her, but somehow I just felt it in my gut. Of course, the last time I'd had such a strong, intuitive feeling was when I saw Mason's picture and knew with my whole being that he was my one true love. And my instincts had been so completely wrong about that.